Woo! What's going on, guys? Orange Form coming at you with another video. In today's video, we're still talking about my analysis of the NFL draft, some college players that are coming out in this draft. And I know I said that I was going to be doing a video every day, but some things just don't happen like that. And I already made bad on my promise, so sorry about that, guys. But I'm going to try to get these out as quick as I can, and maybe every other day is a little bit better because I'm still doing work on these guys. I have a lot of written out, but it will get done. But you guys know how I said I was going to do this. I was going to Google an expert NFL mock drafts, and whatever came up, I'm going to click on certain ones. Go down the list. And this one was and I'm not even like really picking and choosing because I have a lot written down and some I have to do a little more work on. But this was Fantasy Pros. This was a guy by the name of Andrew Erickson who works for Fantasy Pros. He has articles, and he's one of the main guys over there. He had us at 29, Detroit Lions, picking up defensive tackle JER'ZHAN Newton from the Illinois Fighting Illini. 6'2", 295, 300-pound defensive tackle, 21 years old. His stats for 4 years in the Big Ten at Illinois: 187 tackles, 27 and a half tackles for loss, 5 pass deflections, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, and 18 sacks. He is a sack guy at the defensive tackle position, but he can play the run. But we're going to talk about some strengths and his positives. He's very disruptive, super explosive, violent hands. He will fight off old linemen. Uses leverage very well. He's a smaller defensive tackle, so you have to remember that. At 6'2", 295, 300 pounds. Quick. He's super quick. Gets underneath old linemen too as well, and his agility is top notch. Doesn't really get off balance too much when you watch his tape. He can get banged around a little bit, being the smaller guy, but doesn't really lose his balance, which is really important. And he'll throw his body around all day. He's very violent throwing his body around. Kind of doesn't really care about who's throwing it into. So you really like that about him too. High motor player, plenty of moves in the arsenal. Got the rip, got the swim, got the chop move. So he's got all that in his bag of tricks. He plays very strong. He plays stronger than he looks, even though he's 6'2", 300 pounds. That's considered small at the defensive tackle position, but he plays much stronger than that. Plays well in space. He can catch running backs from behind. You really like that. Nice awareness in run defense. Doesn't get lost in the sauce too much. Maybe a little bit here and there, but he doesn't get lost in the sauce too much. And he's a very balanced player. He gets slippery, and I really like this player a lot. Now, hey, some of the weaknesses and the negatives that come with those positives and those strengths, it's always there. He does, like we talked about, he does lack some ideal size and length. Like, believe it or not, guys, there is some teams that will keep him right off the board. Now, Brad Holmes, I'm not really sure. We don't really have a lot of small defensive tackles from what I can remember. It seems all our guys are pretty big. So I don't really know how Holmes feels about that position. You know what I mean? I know he cares about the defensive line, but I don't know how, because some coaches, GMs, they require a standard. They want a guy that's 6'4", 315, 320 pounds, where you got a guy like Newton who's only 6'2", 295, 300 pounds. So they might not even have him on the board. I'm just going by what Andrew Erickson said, but he does lack that ideal size and length. He does have some trouble with some double teams if they really get into him, and penalties can be an issue with them. He jumps offside quite a bit. He's very aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive, but sometimes he's a little too aggressive at times, and gets him in trouble. So coaching staff is really going to need to get a hold of this guy and just work on stuff like that. Just work on your timing, work on your discipline. That stuff that can go away. That stuff that's very coachable, and you just have to trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust your coaches, and you'll get better there. But there's not a lot of too many weaknesses and negatives to this guy's play. He even plays the run pretty well. he can get the ball carriers. So that's not really a weakness and a negative, being a smaller defensive tackle. You would think that it would be, but he's a pretty sound run guy. So really his only weaknesses and his negatives are his size and his length. He's not a tall guy, obviously being at 6'2". That isn't short, but it's a little bit shorter for a defensive tackle. It doesn't have the length of the arms. He has missed some tackles because of that length of his arms as well, too. And then the double team thing, too, and then the offsides, which is very coachable, all of that. The overview and the final analysis of this guy, there's player comps out there too. I don't talk much about player comps, but when I do watch this kid, when I do watch him play, they do comp him to Aaron Donald. Now, I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald. I'm not saying he's the next Aaron Donald, but he plays a lot like him. Now, that could be because he's 6'2", 300 pounds. That's kind of like what Aaron Donald was. Aaron Donald might have been a little bit smaller, 6'2", 290 plus, from what I can recall. But he comps to Aaron Donald. But the overview and the final analysis is that he'll bring it as a pass rusher from the inside. That's what you're going to want. He's a two-time All-American, first team and second team, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He could slip in this draft because we're talking about it because of his smaller frame. That could really happen. I think he's going to start at the 3-tech for sure. I think he's a 3-tech guy that can really line up a little bit. He's a little bit versatile. He kind of line up everywhere. You see Aaron Donald kind of doing the same thing in the NFL, and it's a whole different thing. But you see this Newton kid, if you try and get your hands on some film, you'll see him lining up at the 0-tech all the way out to the 7-tech. So he's versatile. He even can move out to defensive end and try to make some moves on some tackles out there too as well. And he lives in the backfield. So he's going to be a guy that's going to live in the backfield, having like 27. I think it was 27 and a half tackles for loss. So that's a lot. 18 sacks. Good from the interior, but can also even line up a little bit on defensive end. But I think he's going to be a 3-tech guy. He's going to be a guy that's going to be in between the guards, the tackles, going to be lining up. He's not going to be lining up head on a center like a nose tackle or anything like that. But he's going to be trying to pushed out a little bit between guard and tackle right there, man. But he can go from the 0 all the way up to the 7, which is impressive. And he went, that Illinois team has really built up their defense in the past, I don't know how long, years, for the past few years. Really solid defense. And hey, man, we got some, like Brad Holmes has got kind of a thing for those Illinois guys. Kirby Joseph. Who else did we bring over? I think they really wanted to bring over Devin Weatherspoon from the Seattle drafted him right at 5 last year. Kind of stole. That's the rumor that he stole him from the Seattle GM. Don't know his name. Stole him from Brad Holmes at 5, and then that's when we traded back down. So we do like to go to that school. Kirby Joseph was one of them. I think there was another guy, I can't remember. But we do like that school. Illinois is fighting Illini. So you never know what Brad Holmes is going to do. This guy I think he's a first-round pick. He could be right at the end. I think he could slip because of this. I think he could slip because of the size and the frame. That's probably going to happen. Does he slip completely out of the first round? I think there's a possibility of that happening too. But I think his pass rush is very unique from the inside. It's a very strong suit of his. So I can probably see him going at least from 24 down. Could he slip in the second? Possibly, but I don't think he gets out of the first round. If he's there, I don't think he's a bad player at 29. I think it's a pretty solid player that Andrew Erickson picked for us. So that's it, guys. That's my review for Johnny JER'ZHAN Newton out of Illinois, the Fighting Illini. The big kid from in the Big Ten at 6'2", 300 pounds. So, defensive tackle, defense. I'm starting to like what's going on with a lot of these mock drafts that have us drafting defense, and I think that's what we're going to do. But I guess you never know. With Brad Holmes, you just like to roll the dice. But that's it for this guy. On to the next one. Hopefully tomorrow or the day after, we'll see what happens. But thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the bottom right. Don't forget to hit the notification bell up top. Don't forget to like, comment, share this out. What do you guys feel? Johnny Newton. Think he could be a Detroit Lion in Honolulu blue and silver. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's go. Detroit, one pride. Detroit versus everybody. Kaboom. Yeah, buddy.